Hello, RDs and RDs to be. Welcome to the RD Exam Ready podcast. My name is Zach Caseberg, your tutor, your coach, your guide along the path to passing the RD exam. My biggest passion is to help RDs and RDs to be just like you to learn how to pass this exam, whether it's the first time, 50th time, or 100th. If this sounds like you, hey, you are in the right place. I needed a little easy lesson. I needed a little dad time off today a little bit, so I picked a lesson for us to go through to be nice and easy for us all to warm up into, whether you're in your late stages of studying or very early on. And that's going to be carbohydrate counting in terms of diabetes. This is what we're going to run through today. It's a very fun topic to talk about. It's an easy one that we can wrap our heads around once we work together on it. Sometimes students try to memorize a lot from this concept, and I want to encourage you to avoid trying to memorize anything when it comes to this because memorization is a hard road for us to go down because you're trying to memorize so much info for the exam. What I want you to do is critically think and think practically. So, as we go through our concepts today, think practically. Think about what you know about your eating in your day to day life and how it's going to transfer into the carbohydrate counting and what you need to know for exam day. So, as we go through each of these, break that down. Let's figure out our best way to talk about this. As we break this down, we're going to warm up a little bit in talking about a little known concept about our different proteins that are used in the carbohydrate counting system. That sounds a little confusing. Let me back that up. We're going to talk about the different types of proteins, whether they're lean proteins, medium fat proteins, or high fat proteins that are kind of used in diabetes meal planning. We don't talk about it a lot. And so I said, hey, let's talk about these a bit just so we kind of know the little background of what we need. These are helpful because it can help patients to make the proper decisions for overall health, cardiovascular health. So I said, hey, let's warm up with those today. Then we're going to go through the carbohydrate counting part to really go through and apply those practical thinking skills. For proteins, we got three categories that we need you to know, RD, to be. That's going to be lean proteins, medium fat proteins, and high fat proteins. Those proteins, they also have the plant-based proteins as like a fourth category. I'm gonna negate that one today just to kind of stick with what we're doing here. So we're just gonna focus on those top three when it comes to those. For each of these, lean, medium, and high, none of them have carbs. So that's easy. We don't need to know that they have carbs. They all, for every 1 ounce serving, which is about 1 ounce of chicken, meat, whatever it is, they all provide 7 grams of protein. Okay. When it comes to the fat content, that's where it's going to vary. So, for the fat content, for a lean protein, you're going to see about 3 grams of fat per serving or 1 ounce. For a medium fat protein, we're going to see 5 grams of fat per 1 ounce serving. And for a high fat, you're going to see something more like 8 grams of fat per serving. So, very high fat types of foods. For this 1 ounce, that's going to be your serving size. And imagine about the size of like one cheese stick, for instance, that's about 1 ounce, or one egg, that's about 1 ounce. So use these as kind of little helpful tricks of how we can go about knowing what about a size of these is going to be. Let's talk then start with our lean cuts here. If I choose beef that is 90% lean, where I use things like roasts, steaks, tenderloins, flank steak, T-bones, all these beef products here, these are all lean proteins. So they're going to have 3 grams of fat or less. Other examples could be like cheeses, but not all cheeses. If I'm using like a fat-free cheese or a low-fat cheese, that's going to have about 3 grams of fat per serving. So that would be a lean protein. Egg whites are also going to be a lean protein, but just the egg white, not the whole egg. Any type of roasted, steamed, poached, grilled, any fish like that, that's also going to be considered a lean protein. Any of these that aren't fried, like herring, salmon, cod, whether they're baked, broiled, roasted, those all are going to be lean proteins as well. Don't forget shellfish, as well as we know shrimp, crab, oysters, lobster. These are pretty lean as well, and so you can use that 1 ounce serving to be a lean protein. Nothing too surprising there for us. For medium fats, remember we're taking one step up, 5 grams of fat per serving. Some examples of medium fats would be like 85% lean ground beef. That would be an example of a medium fat there. Reduced fat cheeses that may have around 4 to 7 grams of fat per ounce, that would be considered a medium fat protein. The whole egg with the white and the yolk, those are going to be considered medium fat proteins. And when it comes to fish, any type of fried fish, that is going to be considered a medium fat protein, as that frying obviously adds a little bit of extra fat there. Now for the high fat proteins. High fat proteins seem a little easier to me because we should be able to pick these out, right? Bacon. Bacon's a great example of a high fat protein. Or like a pork bacon, turkey bacon, ones that have a lot of fat in them, these would all be considered high fat. For cheeses, some of those processed or even full fat cheeses, like that of American, Parmesan, Swiss, Monterey Jack, 1 ounce of those is going to be an example of a high fat protein because they have the full amount of fat. And then for other proteins here, hot dogs like beef hot dogs, pork hot dogs, some turkey or chicken hot dogs that are considered higher in fat, those will be considered high fat proteins. As well as we can probably throw in most of our processed sausage, smoked sausage, high fat deli meats, salami. Any of these that have more than 8 grams of fat are going to fit into our category of high fat proteins. Hopefully, you have a better kind of understanding of those different fat proteins there in case you see those on exam day. Now, let's talk carbohydrates together. For carbs, I like to break them down category by category and help you to critically think about these. What I tell students is again, let's not memorize. Let's understand the fact that there's going to be some carbs, some types of starchy foods that are denser in carbohydrates than others. Okay. So that's one thing I want you to wrap your head around. If it's something you know that's really dense in carbohydrates, well, chances are you're not going to be able to consume a lot of it for one carb count. A reminder, one carb count when it comes to carbohydrates is 15 grams of carbohydrates. So make sure you keep that in mind. One carb count is 15 grams. Let's start with our starches here. Starches, we have breads, cereals, grains, starchy vegetables here. For the breads, we're going to look here, and your quick unit you're going to use for breads is 1 ounce. 1 ounce of bread, which is about one standard slice of bread, is one carb count. So if I have a sandwich with a top and a bottom slice, that's 2 carb counts. What about a hamburger bun or a hot dog bun, RD to be? What do you think about that? Well, there's a top bun, there's a bottom bun. So that's going to again be equal to 2 carb counts for that full bun there. You can use this as kind of your standard for more or less carbs that we see. Bagels is another one. For bagels, how many carbs do you think will be for that one? Well, bagels are very dense in carbohydrates. And so actually, a quarter of a bagel, 1/4 of a whole bagel, is 1 carb count. That means if you eat the whole bagel, that's 4 carb counts, which is perfectly fine to do. It's just understanding that it is a lot of carbs in one bagel. That's a good one to, I think, keep in your back pocket. It's just a little fun one. What about one waffle or one small pancake? What would you think about that? I would picture that that would be 1 carb count or 15 grams for that. Now that we've talked through these breads, let's kind of venture out a little bit talking about different grains that you're going to need to be familiar with. I want to start with pasta. Pasta. Now, pasta is very, very, very dense in carbohydrates. What a lot of students kind of struggle with, so make a key point here, RD, to be, is that 1/3 cup of cooked pasta is 1 carb count. Again, that is 1/3 cup of pasta is 1 carb count because it's so dense in carbs. We have a couple other foods that also fit into this 1/3 cup area. Rice is an example of a food that 1/3 cup provides 1 carb count. This is cooked, obviously. Quinoa, fluffy quinoa, also provides 1/3 cup for one carb count. So you can see these very dense in carbohydrate, these very starchy grains, you're getting a lot less bang for your buck because the things are so starchy. Now let's go bigger from here. Oatmeal, grits, shredded wheat, buckwheat, bulgur, these are all foods that actually provide 1/2 cup for every one carbohydrate count. So you get to eat more oatmeal for one carb count than you do pasta, which is a great thing to recommend for patients too. It talks about the volume that things take up space in our stomach as well. So, again, for things like shredded wheat, oatmeal, grits, bulgur, these all are going to be 1/2 cup for every one carb count, which is really cool there. So, pasta, quinoa, all those, we're going to get a lot less than we would for that of like the oatmeal or other cooked grains. Let's talk about some other grains here. Actually, instead of grains, starchy vegetables. For starchy vegetables, 1/2 cup, 1/2 cup is going to be a very common unit that you're going to use here. Potatoes are a starchy vegetable, as you know. 1/2 cup of cooked potatoes, whether it's mashed, boiled, roasted, those are all going to be equal to one carb count. 1 cup of French fries, fried French fries, that is going to equal one carb count. Because think about the volume of packed mashed potatoes and then French fries in a cup. The French fries are a bit looser in there, so you're going to get a larger volume for the French fries there compared to that. Corn, beans, lentils, all when they're cooked, are also going to be 1/2 cup that you need to remember. With the exception of baked beans usually have sugar added to them. And so I would say that baked beans are, you're going to get less baked beans for one carb count than you would for like plain rinsed black beans. Now you know your starches, now you've got your grains down. Let's go into some sweet fruits here. The most sugary fruits or the most higher carb items that are fruits are going to be ones that are juiced or dried. Dried fruits, like that of blueberries, cherries, raisins, all of those are 2 tablespoons for every one carb count. You heard that right. 2 tablespoons is what you're going to get for every one carb count. That is not a lot of food to have there, right? Fruit juice is not that much different. For fruit juice, you're going to get 4 fluid ounces, 1/2 cup, for every one carb count. Okay. So if you consume 1 cup of juice, which is pretty normal, I'd say, in a restaurant, that's actually going to be 2 carb counts or 30 grams of carbs right there. For some of our processed and canned items, you're going to be looking at 1 carb count for every 1/2 cup. So if we're talking a 1/2 cup of peaches, plums, pineapple, pears, all those that are canned in water, those would all be considered 1/2 cup for 1 carb count. If it was in light or heavy syrup, obviously it's going to be a higher amount of carbs, but usually when we're educating a patient, we're telling them to do the one that's in water or juice. Okay. So remember, for a few of those fruits we just mentioned there, dried fruits, 2 tablespoons for every 1 carb count. Fruit juice, 4 fluid ounces or 1/2 cup would be 1 carb count. And then for things like our canned items like plums, pineapple, peaches, pears, 1/2 cup is going to be equal to 1 carb count there. Okay, so we kind of have that to fall back on. Let's talk a little bit of more whole fruits here. Whole berries, 1 cup is going to be about 1 carb count there. Strawberries, about 1 cup is 1 carb count. Raspberries, about 1 cup is 1 carb count. For blueberries, 3/4 cup is about 1 carb cup. Oh gosh, 1 carb count. So you can kind of see the consistencies of about 3/4 to 1 cup there will be covered. Lastly, for some of our other whole fruits like our melons, I want you to recommend to use those critical thinking skills. All of your carb count options are about the size of 1 cup or one small fist. So, small apples, small oranges, peaches, those will all provide 1 carb count. One large banana, you might want to ask yourself, well, how much carbs is in a big, large banana? Well, is it going to be one carb count? I think it's going to be bigger than that for a banana, especially because they're starchy. So one large banana is going to be two carb counts. And then for things like watermelon, cantaloupe, honeydew, they're very dense in water, not so dense in carbohydrates. One cup of melon of any kind is going to provide one carb count to you as well. Now let's move on to the dairy. Milk has 12 grams of carbohydrates in it. So you may ask, well, what do I do with that, Zach? I've always been taught just to round one cup of milk up to one carb count or 15 grams. It seems close enough to me. 2/3 cup of yogurt, whether it's plain yogurt, flavored yogurt with or without the fruit, those are all going to be considered one carb count, which is the serving size for yogurts there. 2/3 cup of yogurt, one carb count. And lastly, if you're doing things like a flavored soy milk, rice milk, almond milk, most of these have flavoring and some sugar added. So one cup is going to provide one carb count for these foods here. Now for the non-starchies RD to be. These are interesting and kind of easy once you know the trick. One vegetable choice, just choice, provides only 5 grams of carbohydrates for the non starchies. Okay. So don't think of it so much as carb counts. Think of it as one serving provides 5 grams. This could be 1/2 cup of cooked vegetables or 1 cup of raw vegetables. They're the exact same thing in volume wise because raw vegetables, when I cook them down, they lose volume, but they don't lose nutrition density. So if I cook a cup of cabbage down, it's going to be about 1/2 cup cooked. So that's the exact same for that there. For your raw veggies like spinach, lettuce, onions, tomatoes, whatever it is, one carb count would be, or excuse me, one vegetable option would be 1 cup raw. If I ate 3 cups of raw tomatoes, raw onions, raw lettuce, well, that's 5 times 3 or 15 grams of carbohydrates. You see that? So 1 cup of it, that's 5 grams. 3 cups of it, that's 15 grams or one carb count. For the cooked veggies, we're again going to look at that 1/2 cup cooked as being your kind of equality of 5 grams of carbohydrates. So if I'm doing cooked mushrooms, cooked zucchini, cooked spinach, all of these would be 5 grams of carbs for every 1/2 cup serving. If I ate 1.5 cups of cooked veggies, well, then that would be equaled to 15 grams of carbohydrates because we would just do 5 times 3 in that example. I hope you enjoyed going through that list of those different types of carb choices. I hope you're in a better spot with it. But now we need to apply it to the practice questions. Now we need to see about how we take it into exam day. Let's start out with number 1, using process of elimination to help us to choose the best answer for this one. Number 1, a patient who wants to consume 4 carb counts should choose which of the following meals? A patient who wants to consume 4 carb counts should choose which of the following meals? A, 1 bagel. B, 1/2 cup of cooked oatmeal and 2 slices of bacon. C, 1 cup of milk with 1 large banana. Or D, 1 cup of cantaloupe with 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. A patient who wants to consume 4 carb counts should choose which of the following meals? Let's see. For A, 1 bagel. Well, I know that let's see, what was it? 1/4 of a bagel provides 1 carb count. So if I count that out, if I do 1 whole bagel, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 bagel should fit pretty close to 4 carb counts. I think A might be a good one to hold on to, but let's check out B, C, and D. For B, 1/2 cup of cooked oatmeal and 2 slices of bacon. Well, I know that 1/2 cup of cooked cereal like that of oatmeal is 1 carb count. 2 slices of bacon, I don't think that's going to provide much carbs. So for B seems like it's only going to provide 1 carb count, and my question is asking for which one has 4 carb counts. So I'm going to get rid of B. It's a bad answer. C, 1 cup of milk with 1 large banana. Well, 1 cup of milk is about 1 carb count, and 1 large banana is about 2 carb counts. So if I add those together, that's about 3 carb counts. Not quite the 4 that we need, though. So I'm going to rule out answer C as well. I don't think it's a good fit. For D, 1 cup of cantaloupe and 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. The cantaloupe or melon, I know that 1 cup of it raw or served is going to be 1 carb count. Peanut butter, unless it's got sugar added to it, usually doesn't have too much carbs in it. So I feel like answer D only has 1 carb count in it, which brings me back to answer A. 1 bagel, 1/4 of a bagel is 1 carb count. 1 whole bagel would then be 4 carb counts. Answer A is the best answer for number 1. Number 2. How many grams of carbohydrates are provided in the following meal? Let's see what this meal consisted of. The meal was 4 ounces of filet with 1/2 cup of cooked mushrooms, 4 ounces of orange juice, and 1/2 cup of mashed potatoes, and 1 whole wheat roll. Number 2, how many grams of carbohydrates are provided from the following meal? A 4-ounce filet with a half cup of cooked mushrooms, 1/2 cup of orange juice, 1/2 cup of mashed potatoes, and a 1 ounce whole wheat roll. Okay, what I would recommend you do is write these out. So let's go through each answer and let's critically think about how much carbs is provided from each of these foods. Let's start with the filet. Does the filet have much carbohydrates, RD, to be? No, right? We know it could be maybe a medium or a lean protein, but it's not going to provide much carbs. So I'm not worried about the filet. I'm going to forget about that for right now. One half cup of cooked mushrooms. We just talked about our non-starchy veggies, and what was our rule? 1/2 cup of cooked non-starchy veggies is equal to 5 grams of carbohydrates. Okay, so next to the mushrooms, let's write 5 grams right there. 4 ounces or 1/2 cup of orange juice. What was our rule for our fruit juices? Well, 1/2 cup of fruit juice is 1 carb count or 15 grams. So I'm going to write 15 next to the orange juice there. 1/2 cup of mashed potatoes. What was my equivalent for potatoes? 1/2 cup of cooked potatoes is equal to 1 carb count. So I'm going to write 15 grams next to my mashed potatoes there. And finally, 1 ounce roll, 1 ounce whole wheat roll. Well, I don't necessarily know a whole wheat roll, how much carbs it has, but 1 ounce of bread usually is 1 carb count or 15 grams. So I'm going to write 15 grams next to my whole wheat roll. When I add these up, I've got 5 grams from the cooked mushrooms, 15 grams from the orange juice, 15 grams from the potatoes, and 15 grams from the whole wheat roll. I counted about 50 grams of carbohydrates in total. So let's see what our answers are. For A, 25 grams, a little low. B, 30 grams, still a little low. C, 50 grams, that sounds good. Or D, 75 grams. Okay, I'm going to go with the one that's closest here. It's not always going to be exact. I know that A and B, 25, 30 grams, those are way too low. Even if I messed up my calculations, those are just much too low for answers there. So I'm ruling those out. For D, 75 grams, well, that feels a bit too high in that case. I would say my best answer for number 2 would be C, 50 grams, which is exactly the number of carbs that I got when I calculated out the meal for number 2 here. Number 3, a dietitian wants to provide examples of high fat, medium fat, and low fat proteins. Choose the following answer that is considered high fat, medium fat, and low fat proteins, respectively. So when I look at each answer, the first one listed will be your high fat, medium fat, and low fat in that order. Okay, so they're going to give us 3 kind of options for each, and you have to tell if it is the correct order of high fat, medium fat, and low fat in that order. Let's see. For A, hot dog, egg white, and shrimp. B, bacon, egg, and salmon. C, clams, veal, and tuna. Or D, sausage, American cheese, and bacon. So again, that first option, that's your supposed to be your high fat. Second option is your medium. Third option is your lean. Now let's use process of elimination to see which one is correct. For A, hot dog, egg white, and shrimp. Well, a hot dog I know is a high fat. That sounds good. Egg white, egg white is not going to be a medium fat though. Egg whites are very, very dense in protein, so I would say egg whites are actually going to be a lean protein, and shrimp is also a lean protein. Because of that egg white being incorrect, answer A is not going to be a good option for me. That's not going to be an example of high fat, medium fat to low fat because the egg white itself is actually a lean protein. Okay. B, bacon, egg, and salmon. Okay. Bacon is considered a high fat. Ding, that's correct. Egg is considered a medium fat. That's correct. And salmon is considered a lean protein. That is correct. B seems like it's a good answer that I want to hold on to, but let's look at the other two. For C, clams as a high fat, veal as a medium fat, and tuna as a low fat. Yeah, I think the tuna fits, but clams and veal, I don't think they're in the right category. They feel very off to me. Clams don't seem like they're a high fat protein. So I would rule out answer C because of that. And D, sausage, American cheese, and bacon. Well, all three of these in D actually feel like high fat proteins to me. It doesn't seem like we really have a low fat or medium fat choice within there. So I would rule out answer D because I'm looking for a high fat, medium fat, and a low fat, which these don't fit with. So for number 3, a dietitian wants to provide examples of high fat, medium fat, and low fat proteins. Choose the following answer that is considered high fat, medium fat, and low fat proteins, respectively. My best answer here was bacon, high fat, egg, medium fat, and salmon as my low fat protein option. That wraps up today's lesson, students. I hope you listened, watched, learned as you went through the lesson with us and joined us for today's podcast. Remember, passing this exam is a journey. We all need assistance along the way. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching. Tell other students so that they can get assistance in their studying process. Rate, review, help spread the word. And remember, as always, happy studying to you, RD to be.